The massive silver ship hung in Earth's orbit like a gleaming needle against the black of space. Inside, Lord Grey of the Collective stared at the holographic display of Earth, with his 4 eyes narrowed in confusion. The planet below made no sense to him. "Impossible," he muttered, tapping his long fingers against the control panel. "Simply impossible." His science officer, Master Green, stood quietly beside him, equally puzzled by the readings. The Collective had discovered thousands of civilized worlds in their centuries of space exploration, but they had never encountered anything quite like Earth. "My lord," Master Green said, "our scans show human settlements in nearly every environment on the planet. They're living in frozen wastelands, scorching deserts, dense jungles, and even floating on the seas." Lord Grey shook his head slowly. "No species can be this unstable. Every civilized race we've encountered evolved in a specific environment and stayed there. It's the natural order of things." The display zoomed in on different regions of Earth. In the Arctic, humans had built research stations on the ice. In the Sahara Desert, cities rose from the sand. In the Amazon rainforest, communities thrived in the dense vegetation. Each location should have been lethal to any single species, yet humans not only survived but built lasting settlements in all of them. "Perhaps our instruments are malfunctioning," Lord Grey suggested, though he knew they weren't. The Collective's technology was perfect, as always. "Prepare the contact ship. We will investigate this anomaly personally." The small contact vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, choosing the neutral landing zone, a grassy field in what humans called Switzerland. The local authorities had been notified through basic radio signals, and a welcome party waited below. As Lord Grey stepped out of the ship, his environmental suit immediately began reporting warnings. The temperature was too cold for his species' comfort, the air pressure was slightly high, and the oxygen content was almost dangerous. He watched in amazement as the humans stood there in nothing but thin cloth coverings, seemingly comfortable. "Welcome to Earth," said the lead human, a man in a blue suit. "We're honored to make first contact with your species." Lord Grey's universal translator worked perfectly, but he was distracted by more readings from his suit. A wind had picked up, changing the temperature by several degrees, yet the humans didn't seem to notice. One of them even removed their outer covering. "How?" Lord Grey began, then composed himself. "How do you survive these constant environmental changes?" The humans looked at each other, confused. "What changes?" asked a woman in the group. "The temperature variance, the pressure fluctuations, the different atmospheric compositions across your world." Lord Grey's voice rose with each statement. "Our scans show your species living in environments that differ by as much as 150 of your temperature degrees. It's not natural. It's not stable." The humans tried explaining about their evolutionary history, about how Earth's varied environments had shaped their species to be adaptable. They talked about technology and clothing and building techniques that helped them thrive in different places. But to Lord Grey, it all sounded like madness. "Enough," he finally declared. "Your species is clearly environmentally unstable. You cannot be considered for membership in the Collective until you demonstrate proper environmental consistency." The humans' expressions changed, showing what Lord Grey's cultural database identified as confusion and determination. "With all due respect," the lead human said firmly, "we consider our adaptability to be one of our greatest strengths." Lord Grey turned to his science officer. "Make a note. Species, human. Status, environmentally unstable. Recommendation, quarantine until they learn to choose a proper environment and stick to it." As he walked back to his ship, Lord Grey missed the small smiles the humans exchanged. He also missed the gleam in their eyes, a look that had appeared on human faces throughout history whenever someone had told them something was impossible. The silver ship rose back into orbit, leaving behind a planet full of humans who had just learned they weren't alone in the universe, and who had just been challenged on one of their most fundamental traits. The game was on. 1 month after the first contact, 3 large screens lit up in the United Nations building. Lord Grey's face appeared on all of them, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he addressed the emergency meeting of world leaders. "We have made our decision regarding Earth," he announced. "The collective offers you a challenge to prove your adaptability." The room fell silent. Humanity's first alien contact had gone poorly, but now they had a chance to prove themselves. The world leaders leaned forward in their seats. "Your species claims that living in different environments is natural," Lord Grey continued. "We will test this claim. You will send 3 of your people to our terraformed world, which we call the Crucible." Images appeared on the screens showing a strange planet. Unlike Earth's gradual climate zones, the Crucible was a patchwork of extreme environments. A frozen lake sat next to a boiling desert. Thick jungles bordered windswept mountains. It looked like someone had taken Earth's most extreme places and jumbled them together like puzzle pieces. 3 volunteers, Lord Grey said. 1 Earth year. If they survive and establish a functioning settlement, we will reconsider Earth's status. The selection process took 2 weeks. Thousands volunteered, but in the end, 3 people stood out from the rest. Tom lived his life studying deserts. He had developed new water collection systems and could find life in the driest places on Earth. He was tall and weathered, with skin tanned by years under harsh suns. His calm voice and steady hands had saved many lives during desert rescues. Anna spent more time underwater than on land. As a deep-sea biologist, she understood pressure systems better than anyone. She had designed new ways to grow food in underwater bases and knew how to handle extreme conditions. Her quick thinking and scientific mind had helped her survive equipment failures 3 miles under the ocean. Mike was the youngest of the 3, but he had already climbed the world's highest peaks. He knew how to handle thin air and freezing temperatures. More importantly, he understood weather patterns and how to read dangerous conditions. His small frame held surprising strength, and his mind held even more knowledge about survival. They met for the first time at the training facility in Norway. The world's best scientists had gathered to prepare them for the Crucible. The planet's environments change every few miles, their mission director explained, pointing to a 3D map. "You'll need to adapt faster than any humans in history." Tom studied the desert regions. "These sand formations, they're not natural. The whole planet's been engineered. Like a test track," Anna added, looking at the strange lakes and oceans. "They want to see how we handle their obstacle course." Mike walked around the hologram. "The mountain ranges are too perfect. They're testing every possible condition at once." They trained for 2 months, learning about each other's specialties. Tom taught them how to find water in unlikely places. Anna showed them how to handle pressure changes. Mike trained them in climbing and navigation. The day of departure came too quickly. As they stood before the alien ship that would take them to the Crucible, reporters from every nation gathered to watch. "Why did you volunteer?" a reporter asked Tom. He smiled. "Because they think we can't do it. History is full of people saying humans can't survive somewhere. We proved them wrong every time." Anna nodded. "The collective thinks we're unstable because we live everywhere. They don't understand that's what makes us strong." "Besides," Mike added with a grin, "someone has to show them what humans can really do." Lord Grey watched from his ship as the 3 humans boarded. His expression showed what his species considered amusement. "They speak confidently," he said to his science officer. "But the Crucible has broken stronger species. No one can survive in such changing conditions." The humans heard his words over their translators. They exchanged knowing looks as they strapped into their seats. The collective was about to learn an important lesson about underestimating human beings. The ship's engines fired up, and humanity's greatest survival test began. The landing pod shook violently as it entered the Crucible's atmosphere. Tom, Anna, and Mike watched through the viewport as their new home came into view. From space, the planet looked like a colorful patchwork quilt. Squares of white ice next to red deserts, blue oceans beside green jungles. "Brace for landing," the ship's computer announced. The pod touched down on a flat rocky area between a desert and an ice field. As the dust settled, all three humans checked their environmental suits. "Remember," Anna said, "we have 1 hour to find shelter before the sun sets. The temperature will drop by 200 degrees in minutes." They stepped out onto the alien world. The ground under their feet was solid rock, cracked from extreme temperature changes. To their left, endless sand dunes rose into the orange sky. To their right, a wall of ice stretched up into the clouds. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. "Look at this," Tom said, kneeling to examine the ground. He picked up a handful of dust. "The sand from the desert is mixing with ice particles. This border zone is completely unique." Mike pointed to the horizon. "Those rock formations might have caves. We need shelter before we can explore more." They unloaded their basic supplies quickly: water filters, portable solar panels, and emergency rations. The alien ship that brought them had already left orbit, leaving them truly alone on this engineered world. As they walked toward the rocks, Anna used her scanner to check the air. "The atmosphere is breathable, but it changes composition every few miles. We'll need to map the safe zones." The first cave they found was perfect, deep enough to protect from temperature changes, but with a wide entrance for their equipment. They worked fast to set up their base, always aware of the setting sun. 10 minutes to sunset, Mike warned, watching the alien star sink toward the horizon. They had just finished sealing the cave entrance with their thermal barriers when darkness fell. The temperature dropped instantly. Ice crackled as it formed on their barrier, while behind them, heat from the desert side still radiated through the rocks. The cave became their first lesson in surviving the Crucible's extremes. "The collective thinks these conditions will break us," Tom said, setting up their monitoring equipment. "But this is exactly what humans are good at, finding ways to live where no one else can." Through their first night, they took turns watching their instruments and planning. The cave's temperature stayed stable thanks to their barriers, but outside, their sensors showed incredible changes. "Look at this data," Anna said, pointing to their main screen. "The desert side stays hot even at night, while the ice field drops to temperatures that would freeze oxygen. But right here, in this zone where they meet, we can use that." Mike finished her thought. "The temperature difference will create wind patterns. Wind means power. Power means we can build more permanent shelters." As the alien sun rose, they got their first real look at their new home. The light revealed more details of the Crucible's engineered nature. The dunes were too perfect, the ice too clear, the rock formations too regular. "They built this whole planet to test species," Tom said, making notes on his tablet. "But they made one mistake. They made it too much like Earth, just more extreme." Anna smiled. "And if there's one thing humans know how to handle, it's extremes," they all said together. That first morning, they began mapping their surroundings. They marked safe zones, dangerous areas, and potential resources. They found water trapped between ice layers, minerals they could use for building, and signs that the planet's engineered nature might work in their favor. The collective had created the Crucible as an impossible challenge. But as the three humans started their first full day on the alien world, they weren't thinking about impossibilities. They were thinking about solutions, about adaptation, about survival. And somewhere up in space, watching through hidden sensors, the collective was about to learn their first lesson about human determination. 2 months into their stay on the Crucible, the three humans had turned survival into an art form. Their original cave base now served as the center of a growing network of connected shelters, each one teaching them more about thriving in extreme conditions. Tom stood at the edge of the desert zone, watching his latest invention at work. He had created what he called moisture nets, huge sheets of special fabric stretched between poles. As hot air from the desert met cold air from the ice field, water droplets formed on the nets, trickling down into collection tanks. "The morning harvest is ready," he called through their comm system. Behind him, rows of nets had captured enough water to fill their reserves for a week. The collective didn't realize they gave us perfect conditions for water collection. In another section of their base, Anna worked in what they called the pressure lab. She had discovered that the rapid temperature changes created unique pressure patterns they could use. Her machines turned these pressure differences into energy, powering their growing settlement. "Look at these readings," she said as Mike entered the lab. "The pressure system is so predictable. We can time our power generation perfectly. It's like having a solar panel that never stops working." Mike had spent the last week building safe passages between their shelters. His climbing skills had helped him discover that the strange rock formations conducted heat in useful ways. By carving specific paths through the rock, they could create corridors that stayed at comfortable temperatures. "The whole planet is trying to kill us," Mike said, marking new safe routes on their digital map. "But everything that makes it dangerous also gives us something we can use." Their biggest innovation came from combining their skills. They had built what they called mobile shelters, small bases mounted on special tracks that could be moved when conditions changed. These shelters could be rolled to safe zones before temperature shifts became dangerous. "The collective expects us to stay in one place and fight the environment," Tom said during their evening meal. "Instead, we're moving with it, using its power instead of fighting it." Anna nodded, checking their daily readings. "Our adaptation rate is increasing. Every problem we solve teaches us how to solve the next one faster." They had learned to read the planet's rhythms. Every extreme had a pattern, every danger had a warning sign, and every barrier had a way around it. The collective had created the crucible to break them, but instead, it was making them stronger. One morning, they received their first message from Lord Grey since landing. "Your survival is unexpected." His voice crackled through their comm system. "Perhaps you have found a single stable zone and are simply hiding there." Mike laughed as he showed their movement map. A web of paths, shelters, and resource collection points spanning multiple environment zones. "We're not hiding," he replied. "We're thriving." The silence from the alien lord was telling. Their success came from more than just technology. They had learned to think like the crucible, to predict its changes, to dance with its extremes instead of fighting them. Where the collective saw chaos, they saw patterns. Where their alien watchers saw death zones, they saw opportunities. "They don't understand," Tom said one evening, as they watched the sun set from their newest observation post. "Every human settlement on Earth taught us something. Desert cities taught us water management. Mountain towns taught us about thin air. Ocean platforms taught us about dealing with pressure. We're not surviving despite Earth's different environments," Anna added. "We survived because of them. Every challenge made us more adaptable." Mike pointed to their growing base. "And now we're doing the same thing here. Every day, every problem, every solution makes us better at living in this place." As night fell on the crucible, bringing its extreme temperature changes, the three humans didn't retreat in fear. They watched through their shelter windows as their machines and systems continued working, turning the planet's deadly forces into the power they needed to survive. The collective had created the perfect test for humanity. They just didn't realize they were testing humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn any environment into home. 6 months into their mission on the crucible, Tom was checking moisture nets in a new desert zone when his scanner picked up something strange. Beneath the sand, regular geometric shapes appeared on his screen. Too perfect to be natural. "Anna, Mike," he called through the comm system. "You need to see this." Within an hour, they had gathered at the site. The wind howled around their environmental suits as they used sonic mapping tools to get a better view of what lay beneath the sand. "It's a building," Anna said, staring at the detailed scan results. "No, it's an entire complex of buildings." Mike adjusted the scanner settings. "Look at the depth and arrangement. This isn't just a random structure. It's a city. A buried city." Working carefully with tools they designed for the harsh environment, they began to uncover their discovery. As layers of sand were cleared away, they revealed metallic walls covered in unfamiliar symbols. "These aren't collective markings," Tom said, examining the strange writing. "This is something older." Anna found an entrance, sealed for who knew how long. Their cutting tools made short work of the ancient locks, and they stepped into a dark hallway that hadn't seen light in centuries. "The air's breathable," Anna announced, checking her instruments. "The building must have some kind of preservation system still working." As they explored deeper, their lights revealed a story they hadn't expected. The buried city had been a colony, much like their own settlement. But unlike them, these colonists had tried to fight the Crucible's extreme conditions rather than adapt to them. "Look at these machines," Mike said, examining massive devices in what appeared to be a control room. They tried to create permanent weather barriers, force fields to keep the environments separated. Tom studied the ancient data screens they'd managed to power up. They failed because they fought against the planet's nature. All this technology, and they couldn't survive because they wouldn't adapt. The most important discovery came in what looked like a research center. Anna found records showing that the Crucible hadn't always been an engineered test world. The collective had taken an already dangerous planet and made it worse, turning it into their ultimate challenge for other species. "This changes everything," she said, downloading all the data she could find. "The collective didn't just build a test, they modified a real planet. That means all these extremes follow natural laws, even if they've been amplified." Mike nodded, understanding. "If we can learn those laws, we can predict everything," Tom finished. "Not just survive here, but master it." The buried city became their library. While its original inhabitants had failed, they'd left behind valuable information about the Crucible's patterns. The humans learned about weather cycles they hadn't yet seen, about resources they hadn't discovered, about dangers they could now prepare for. More importantly, they found something the collective had never intended, proof that their approach to survival was right. "These colonists tried to build permanent structures," Tom explained during their evening meeting. "They wanted to make each zone stable, just like the collective thinks we should. But that's not how you handle a world like this," Anna added. "You need to be as flexible as the environment itself." They spent weeks studying the ruins while maintaining their own growing settlement. Every piece of information they found confirmed their methods: mobile bases instead of fixed ones, adaptable systems instead of rigid barriers, working with the extremes instead of against them. One evening, as they added the ancient colony's data to their maps, Mike smiled. "You know what this means?" he asked. "The collective's perfect test world isn't just testing us. It's proving that their whole philosophy about environmental stability is wrong." The humans looked at their settlement through the shelter windows. Mobile platforms rolling smoothly between zones, moisture nets swaying in the wind, pressure systems humming with power. Unlike the buried city with its failed barriers and broken machines, their adaptation-based approach was working perfectly. The Crucible had killed the colony that tried to fight it. But for humans who knew how to adapt, it was becoming home. 8 months into their mission on the Crucible, the humans' weather monitoring systems began showing unusual patterns. Anna was the first to notice something wrong. "These readings can't be right," she said, checking her instruments again. All three of them gathered around the main display screen in their central shelter. Tom pointed to the swirling patterns on the map. "The hot and cold zones are shifting faster than normal. The pressure differences are getting stronger." "It's a perfect storm," Mike said quietly. "All the extreme conditions are about to collide." They had learned about these events in the buried city's records, but reading about them was very different from facing one. The Crucible's engineered weather patterns were building up to a massive planetary storm, unlike anything they'd seen on Earth. Lord Gray's face appeared on their communication screen. "A level 5 convergence approaches," he announced, trying to hide his concern. "The collective offers immediate evacuation. No species has survived a full convergence on the Crucible." The three humans looked at each other. They had prepared for this, but now theory would meet reality. "Request denied," Anna replied firmly. "We've got this." They had less than 6 hours before the storm hit. Their mobile shelters were strong, but not strong enough for what was coming. They needed something more. The ancient colony tried to weather these storms on the surface, Tom said, pulling up their maps. That's why they failed. We need to think differently. Mike studied the underground scans they'd made. Look here, he pointed to deep cave systems they'd mapped. If we can reach these caves and seal them properly, we can ride out the storm underground. Anna finished. And I know how to keep us powered. They moved with practiced speed, 8 months of experience showing in every action. Their mobile shelters rolled quickly to the cave entrances they'd chosen. The moisture nets were collapsed and stored. Power systems were transferred underground. Tom's knowledge of pressure systems helped them design airlocks that could handle the storm's extremes. Anna's deep-sea experience proved invaluable in setting up life support in the confined space. Mike's climbing skills let them secure everything properly in the caves. The storm hit with incredible force. On their monitors, they watched as temperatures swung wildly between burning heat and freezing cold. Winds reached speeds that would tear apart anything above ground. The pressure changes would have crushed ordinary shelters. Look at these readings, Anna said, monitoring their cave system. The storm is actually helping us. The pressure differences are powering our generators better than ever. They had turned the storm's fury to their advantage. Deep underground, they didn't just survive. They thrived. Their hydroponic gardens, set up in the weeks before, provided fresh food. Water condensers pulled moisture from the cave air. Power flowed steadily from the pressure difference between the surface and their cave. The collective thinks this storm is a disaster, Tom said, checking their growing supplies. But it's just another part of the planet's cycles. Once you understand it, you can use it. Hours turned into days as the storm raged above. They used the time to improve their underground systems, preparing for future storms. Through their cameras, they watched their surface equipment, built to fold down and protect itself, weathering the storm exactly as designed. On the 5th day, Lord Grey contacted them again. "Your life signs are still strong," he said, not hiding his surprise this time. "How have you survived?" Mike smiled at the alien's image. "We didn't fight the storm, sir. We adapted to it. Just like we've adapted to everything else on the Crucible." When the storm finally passed, they emerged to find the surface transformed. Landscapes had shifted, new geological features had formed, but their flexible, adaptable systems had survived, ready to be repositioned for the new environment. The collective calls these storms convergences because all the extremes come together. Anna said as they watched the alien sun rise over the changed landscape. But they never understood. That's not a weakness for us. It's an opportunity. They began rebuilding their surface installations, stronger and smarter than before. The storm that was supposed to break them had only made them better. 1 year to the day after their landing, the 3 humans stood outside their main shelter, watching the collected ship descend from the Crucible's orange sky. Their settlement had grown far beyond the original cave. Mobile platforms moved smoothly between environment zones, carrying supplies and monitoring equipment. Moisture nets swayed in the hot desert winds, while pressure generators hummed steadily in the cold zones. Lord Grey stepped out of his ship, accompanied by a group of alien scientists. His 4 eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. "Welcome to New Adaptation," Tom said proudly. They had named their settlement after the principle that had kept them alive for a year on this engineered world. The alien inspection team spent hours examining everything the humans had built. They studied the mobile shelters that rolled between extreme zones. They analyzed the underground storm shelters that had survived multiple convergences. They tested the water and power systems that turned the planet's deadly forces into useful resources. "You didn't just survive," Lord Grey said finally. "You've mastered the Crucible's environments." Anna smiled. "Not mastered. Adapted to them. That's the difference you never understood. We don't try to control our environment. We learn from it and change with it." The aliens were most surprised by their data center. Mike showed them the detailed maps and predictions they'd developed, combining information from the buried city with their own discoveries. The Crucible isn't chaos, he explained. It's a complex system of patterns. Once you stop fighting them and start working with them, they become predictable. Lord Grey's scientists huddled together, discussing rapidly in their own language. Finally, the alien leader turned to the humans. The collective must revise its judgment, he announced formally. Your species is not environmentally unstable. You are environmentally adaptive. We have never seen this quality before. Tom looked at the settlement they'd built. Every human city on Earth taught us something different about survival. We brought all those lessons here. That's why we succeeded where others failed. Anna added, our adaptability isn't a weakness. It's our greatest strength. But the biggest surprise came when Lord Grey shared the collective's decision. Earth will be granted full membership in the collective, he said. But more than that, we request your help. There are worlds we thought uninhabitable. Perhaps they only need the human touch. The three humans exchanged glances. Their year on the Crucible hadn't just proved humanity's worth. It had changed the collective's entire understanding of survival and adaptation. Mike grinned. You engineered this planet to be the ultimate test. Instead, it became the ultimate proof that humanity's way works. In the following weeks, ships arrived from Earth carrying more humans eager to learn from the original team. The settlement grew quickly as new ideas and innovations were added to the original designs. But more importantly, delegations arrived from other worlds in the collective. Species that had never considered adaptation as a survival strategy began learning from the humans. The Crucible, designed as a testing ground, became a training center. Look at that, Tom said one evening, watching alien visitors learn to use their mobile shelter system. They're starting to understand. Every environment has something to teach us. Anna nodded, reviewing requests from other worlds for human assistance. The collective spent centuries looking for perfect, stable environments. Now they're learning that change isn't always bad. And humanity? Mike asked, studying the latest data from their sensors. What did we learn? They looked out over their settlement, where humans and aliens worked together under the Crucible's orange sky. The planet was still as extreme as ever, but now those extremes weren't threats. They were opportunities. We learned what we've always known, Tom said. That home isn't about finding the perfect place. It's about adapting to the place you're in. The Crucible's sun set on another day, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The temperature began its nightly plunge, and the mobile shelters rolled smoothly into position. Humanity hadn't just survived their trial. They had changed the very definition of what survival meant.